everybody. Thank you for joining me again. This is Jasmine, host of the Ethereal Pathways podcast. I wanted to do an episode today on the difference between a wounded masculine and a wounded feminine, and a divine masculine and divine feminine. That would be the healed version. And that would be anybody can be healed, divine masculine and feminine. And again, when I speak of masculine and feminine, this would be, it's not gender related, it's more energetic related, because there could be, a person that's in a female body that is mostly masculine, that leans more towards masculine, and vice versa. So this is really more for energetic, whichever way you feel like you naturally lean towards. That would be your main gender, energetically, not necessarily gender wise in the physical body. So I wanted to go over first the wounded masculine energetic qualities, so we can better understand when we are a little bit out of balance in our masculine and feminine. Before I go through this list, actually, let me touch a little bit on the reason why we should do this. So we really need to be looking at the healing in our lives, right? So coming from that place of being wounded from traumas, from childhood trauma, or adult trauma, different dynamics and different relationships we've had that wounded us in some way, and we're still healing from that, or we haven't healed yet. That would be what I'm talking about here. And when we need to look at these things is when we get out of balance in our lives. And most of us have, blockages in, either a masculine, feminine, and you have to work through those to try to balance it out. And that's something I've been working through the last 2 to 3 years since I've found out about this stuff. So I wanted to share a little bit about what I've learned so far and kind of give examples of, what would be an imbalance feminine or in a masculine, and what would be a balance, and what would those qualities look like energetically. We obviously want to balance our masculine and feminine to come into inner union with our divine self, and that's our connection with the divine source or God. So that is the ultimate goal in our lives, is to become one again and whole and healed. And obviously we're continually in a process of healing, but we can navigate right back to our inner union itself. So I wanted to go over the list of the wounded masculine energetic traits or qualities, and then list the divine healed version of the masculine, and then I'll go into the feminine. So energetic qualities of the wounded masculine is they're aggressive, like overly aggressive, easily offended, competitive, which there's a healthy version of competitiveness. This is like overly competitive. Aligned with ego, which means your human brain, not your divine self, your soul self. Success-driven, defensive, over-controlling, selfish, withdrawn emotions, materialistic, stuck in mind, like stuck in your head all the time, overthinking, refuses help. They don't want to get help from anybody. They don't want to accept help from anybody. They think they can do everything on their own. And spiritually disconnected from the divine. Energetic qualities of the divine masculine, which would be the healed masculine, would be they're encouraging, they protect and they guide others. They have inspired action. That would be like divinely inspired action. Clear communication. There's no non-clarity there that can produce chaos and confusion. So it's the opposite of that, just very clear communication. Responsible for their own actions. Expanded vision. Aligned work. And that is soul-aligned work. When it says aligned work, it's soul-aligned work with your spiritual mission. Spiritual purpose is another one. You have a spiritual purpose and you recognize what that is. You find out what it is, you're working towards that. Honest and humble. Uplifting strength, expresses emotions. That's a huge one for a lot of masculines right now, and I'll touch a little bit on that. I'm sure we all kind of know that's an issue in our society that needs to be healed, and big time, and needs to be worked on. And they're also disciplined and driven. So I just talked about the whole expressing emotion thing. That's something that I have personally witnessed and noticed in my personal journey on this earth is the societal like way they raise the men is to be strong and don't show emotion and don't because it's a sign of weakness, right? It's almost like the fight or flight kind of thing, the animalistic side of us that they teach us that you're not a real man if you can cry or whatever, No, it's the opposite. In fact, I personally find it very attractive in a man that can express his emotions openly, even if he's new to it. If he's trying and he's expressing his emotions openly, that's huge. I find that very attractive. And, not in a needy way. And so let me clarify that, not in like, oh, I need, it's more from yes, he understands what he's done wrong. Maybe if he did something wrong or treated you wrong or hurt you inadvertently, and he's expressing how he felt about treating you wrong, and he's trying to make it right, and he wants you, in his life, things like that, but not from an overly needy sense. So that's something that's huge, and I really hope that people really start learning and opening up their eyes to this and knowing that it's really important for men and women both to openly express their emotions. It may not always be, the best timing to do it sometimes, but as long as we get those emotions expressed, like in a timely manner and work through whatever it is, that's the important part. I do think that we need to be more open with our emotions in society anyway. That's part of who we are. Even as, spiritual beings in a physical body, we have to learn to integrate our emotions here in our physical body and with our soul self. And so that's part of the human experience, is learning how to integrate, soul self and physical body, and that includes ego, which is the mind, and the emotions. And that is very challenging. I mean, we all know that. It's very challenging. Sometimes, you feel overwhelmed with emotions. I know I have recently. I've been through a lot the last 2 months especially since these lunar eclipses and full moons have happened in September. And now, we just had the super moon here in October, was just a few days ago. It's October 12th here. And, that was huge for me. I went through a lot emotionally this last week and ended up having to cut out, my own sister out of my life. Unfortunately, that was something that, I felt I needed to do for my own peace. And, sometimes that happens. I know I talked before about having to cut my own mother out of my life, years ago due to the same reason. And so it's unfortunate. It just is part of a life, and sometimes you got to do what you got to do to keep your peace. I was already going through a lot in my personal life, and then, all this other stuff was added to it, and I just couldn't do it. I just said, I can't do this anymore. And, I pray for my sister still. I still love her, but I had to do what I had to do. But getting back to... let's go through the wounded feminine energetic qualities and then the divine feminine. And I could touch a little bit more on the stories that I've gone through the last couple months. So wounded feminine energetic qualities are passive, like passive aggressive. They don't speak their mind. They don't speak clearly and speak up for themselves. Too yielding. They give in to people too much. They're victimized. They feel victimized all the time, like they're a victim. They feel insecure, they're manipulative, they're attention-seeking, they have poor boundaries with others, and really with anything in their life. That could be work-life balance and everything, and their family. They self-sacrifice too much. They are overly critical of themselves and others. They are needy, and they're desperate, and they don't trust their self or their intuition. And divine feminine, healed feminine traits would be they're receptive, they're grounded. That means they're not emotional chaos all over the place. They're decisive in things. They're empowered. They trust their self and their intuition. They're very nurturing. they prioritize self-care and self-love, which is boundaries, creating healthy boundaries with anything that causes chaos, confusion, drama in your life that makes you ungrounded. That would be including that, like what I just had to do. Open, strong heart, emotionally resilient, intuitive, reflective, and supported by life. So you can kind of see there how those dynamics are playing out. At least in my life, I'm sitting here explaining to you what I've been going through. I already explained that I had to cut, I had to cut some things out of my life. Some things happened, some upheavals happened in my life the last couple, and then I had to cut, some people out of my life, and it was really hard for me. But we all go through it. Full moons usually mean, culmination or endings, and things come into fruition, like they manifest and come into fruition, and new moons represent new beginnings. And so we go through this monthly cycle every freaking month, and it's always something. It could be a way of thinking, it could be old belief patterns, relationships romantically or with other people like family or friends, a job, anything like that in your life. That these things you start to see the cycles through the lunar cycle, and it is really important. Actually, start noticing. I just tell you to start noticing what things happen around a full moon in your life, what endings happen, what manifestations come to pass. Like if you've been working towards something and something comes through, like a job offer or whatever, start noticing things like that and when they occurred within the month, and look at the astrology of what was going on. A lot of times you'll notice that crazy drama and all that upheaval stuff and endings and stuff will happen around a full moon, plus or minus 4 or 5 days either side of it, because the energy is not just on that day. It affects it 4 or 5 days before and 4 or 5 days after. And the new moons, you start noticing that. But there's also other planetary alignments and conjunctions and things that will affect life events too. So I've really started looking into that more and more here recently, and actually went back and started doing that in my own life here the last couple weeks, looking up the dates that I met, like for instance, my guy friend, back in June, and how it was, like I looked up the astrology of that, and it literally said the astrology that day said new beginnings in relationships, and I was like, wow. So, a lot of people don't want to believe in astrology, and we're taught not to due to religious, institutions. I've always, for some reason, and now I kind of starting to begin to understand it was my intuition, my soul self knew about this from way back past lives. So I knew there was something to it, but I couldn't always prove it back in the past before internet and all that. When I started kind of believing in it back, I was probably in my teens or early 20s. And I just always knew there was something to it. I didn't know why I knew that. I just always followed it. And it didn't make a lot of sense to me. But I just, use ChatGPT now or whatever, Google, and a lot of stuff is coming in insight. So it's very interesting to see how it plays into your daily life and your, what's going on that month and that year. Because there's going to be different dynamics for each year, month, day, whatever. You're going to start noticing that. And I started, like reading my forecast, or now I watch them on YouTube from famous astrologers, and they give forecast, and I literally see how those things play out. Sometimes I go back and listen to it after, so that way there's no mental, something playing into that. You can't say that, oh, well, you heard that, so you saw that. No, it wasn't that. A lot of times I'll go back after, at the end of the month, and I'll read it, what it was supposed to be playing, and I'll see the dynamics, how they played out in my life, and it was accurate. So I just wanted to, throw it out there if it's something you're looking into, you would like to look into. It's very interesting to see that. Just start noticing things like that, and then Google it. What was the astrology of that day? And, if you know more about your sun sign, your birth chart, you can get that anywhere. You can order one online for, I don't know, a few bucks at some places. You can get your full birth chart just by knowing your date of birth, your location of birth, your city, state of birth, and the time and the day, obviously, in the year, month, day, and year. But and you find out a whole lot about how, not just how the regular dynamics are affecting you in that month, but also your personal chart, where it hits you in your chart, which houses and stuff it hits, and what, you'll start digging into a little bit more about why certain things had to play out. And it's really interesting to see that. So, and I just wanted to throw that out there. I'm probably going to be digging a little bit more into astrology just to, learn a little bit more about it, because I just have a basic knowledge of it. But it's just really, really becoming something I'm more interested in as I go along. Obviously, way back in biblical times even, you've got the Northern Star that they were following. They knew certain things were coming. They knew that certain things were prophesied. A lot of times it wasn't always from, oral tradition. A lot of times it was from the astrology that they studied back then. So pretty interesting stuff. Anyway, I just kind of wanted to share that a little bit about, something I've been going through lately, and how, we can try to start looking at ways that we can, where we're giving away our power, where we're out of balance in our masculine and feminine, and then start drilling down into why that is in our shadow work. And I actually came across some shadow work books online, and they were like ebooks that you can download and then print out if you wanted to. And one of them was a shadow work journal, and it had like the inner work relation. It had like 4 or 5 different books with it. And I want to say I paid about $15 or $20. I can't remember exactly how much I paid, but it had like 4 or 5 different things, and 2 of the books were audibles that I could download in paper, and I could listen to the audible, which was really nice, because I'm more of an audible person. I don't have a lot of patience to sit here and read through a bunch of stuff. So for me, I love audibles. And so that is a nice, good tool I'm going to be looking into and using, and I can give some feedback later. If anybody has anything that they want to ask me about any dynamics that I've gone through in my life with my family or friends, or romantic relationships, feel free to comment and ask, and I'll be happy to answer them for you in a future video, or I can comment, and reply back to your comment. But if there's other topics that you want me to go into that you're interested in hearing my perspective about, or, knowledge about, please also comment below, and I'd love to address it in a future video. So I just wanted to do this real quick video, so I hope this caught you on a good day. You're having a great day or evening, whenever you're catching it. And I hope you join me for a future episode. If you're interested in becoming a guest on my podcast to interview and share anything like your spiritual journey, spiritual awakening, or your personal journey, whatever it is, or just about spirituality in general, or paranormal stuff, whatever it is that's on your heart to share, I would love to interview you. If you're interested, you can reach out to me at my email that's listed in the description box, Ethereal Pathways 144@gmail.com, or you can, comment below, and I can reach out to you that way as well. So I hope this helps some people out there, give a little more clarity, and I hope to catch you for a future video. You take care, and love and light to you all.